So about the Alam Kunmiri Foundation, this is the second such organization, organized effort in the name of Alam Kunmiri that has happened in Hyderabad. The first one was immediately after his death. He died in 1983, September 1983. And after that, some of his friends, colleagues, comrades, students who got together and started this organization. There were people, in fact, from, at that time it was called CIFL, which is now the English and Foreign Languages University. People from CIFL here, there were people from other universities, Osmani University particularly, from Central University, and various other walks of life who got together. But that organization, it was also called I think the Alam Kunmiri Foundation or some similar name. They would organize an annual lecture, and the other big thing that they did was to collect a lot of his articles which had been published in various journals which are not accessible anymore, and it was published by Sage as a book. It was introduced by M.T. Ansari, who was at that time here in CIFL. Now he teaches at Central University. So that book, Islam, Modernity, Secularism, is available still, and I think it is in a sense a very important contribution. And even today, though those essays were written way back in the 60s, 70s, some of them were written in the 50s perhaps, still a contribution into a lot of the debates around Islam, secularism, the whole issue of what happens with the churning of colonialism, capitalism, and colonized societies. In that sense, that first foundation did some very good work. But over time, I suppose, some bit of lack of initiative, perhaps some differences within people, things of that sort, worked to different political perspectives actually about what the foundation should do, led to a state where slowly, work came to a halt. And I think after the publication of the book, which happened sometime in the late 1990s, early 2000s, that foundation really didn't do much. In 2000, when my father, Javed Alam, he came to Hyderabad, some of the people actually got around talking about how this foundation was doing interesting work and it should continue again. And at that time, again, a group of his students, friends, with my father, in a sense, as a person who got them together, started what is now called the Alam Kunmiri Foundation. We went and registered it as a society under the relevant laws, and all the tax things and everything was done. We asked for all his friends and colleagues, people who knew him, who studied under him, to contribute. And so then the foundation started. And the whole idea of the foundation is basically to try and do what Alam Kunmiri did. And the idea is not just to perpetuate his memory, there are a lot of foundations which they are to perpetuate somebody's memory, which in itself is not a bad thing to do, but this particular foundation had a different idea behind it. I can say that because at least in the second iteration of this foundation, which started in 2000, 2001, the idea was to do what Alam Kunmiri would do himself. And as his grandson, I remember whenever I would visit Hyderabad and stay, we used to stay almost for a month in winter when my school was closed in Shimla. And every evening there would be people sitting in his home. So there would be filmmakers, there would be poets, there would be political activists, there would be, some Naxalite running away underground, there would be academicians from India, from outside. And almost every evening would be like an impromptu seminar. And there would be no agenda fixed or anything like that, but people would just talk, and there would be, somebody's written a poem, they would bring that poem. I've heard this story so many times from my grandparents, from other poets in Hyderabad, that, for example, Makhdoom Moinuddin wrote a poem which is actually pretty well known, Ek Chameli Ke Mandve Tale. And apparently, this is what I've heard. I can't vouch for the historical fact of this, but what I've heard from a range of people is that this was actually one day he was going back from my grandparents' place, and on the way back, when he was going in the rickshaw, he actually saw what he describes in the poem about the intense passion and love of working class people who were living on the street. And when he got that poem in his mind, the next day he came and he said, I have to first read it out to you. So there was Makhdoom reading out his poem. There would be people, I remember intense debates about Communist Party line, about how to deal with issues of religious assertion, how to deal with questions of caste, how to, issues of feminism and women's politics, about nationalism. All these things, intensely debated, people getting angry, there will always be some rum or whiskey around to lubricate conversations. People will get their food along, somebody will, add a bottle to the collective bar there. And the whole thing was, there was this intense, everyday discussion. In a sense, his house was like a place which was an open house, especially for people to come, talk, chat, express ideas, get critiques, talk about others. And the whole idea of Alam Kunmiri Foundation was to, the people who had been through that would feel a sense of loss, that with his passing, and then my uncles moved out, and then my grandmother passed away, and much before she passed away, she left Hyderabad. So that atmosphere went, that place, and that physical presence where people could do that. And there was always this thing that let's get back and do something like that again. And the whole idea of Alam Kunmiri Foundation was not so much to have just lectures, but to get people to talk, to get people engaged into discussions and all that. So a lot of things that we have done right from the beginning was to, even the seminars we did or the talks we did, was to do things like that. And we have tried to reflect some of the interests and engagements that Alam Kunmiri had. I mean, he was somebody who came from a deeply religious Muslim background. His family of religious scholars, theologians, and he grew up in that context. He was when he was very young, he got to read the Quran, and then he learned Persian, the literature, the theology of Islam. And he also got involved in Communist Party politics right at a very young age. I think he was in his teens, 17 years old, I think, or 16, when he got involved in what was at that time called the Comrades Association in 1938, which was the formation of the Communist Party in the Nizam state. And he was very much a part of the formation of the Communist Party in this whole region. He was very much a part of the Telangana armed struggle. In fact, his own ancestral home went because there was, what we have heard was, there was an armed shipment. And in fact, this is a very interesting story. The arms used to be, one of the places where the arms would be hidden was a graveyard, which was next to the mosque and madrasa, which was his sort of from his ancestors came to him. And he was part of the group which would organize women to come and do ziyarat, which is to come to the graves of family people and pay respects. And these women would then hide dismantled guns, guns in 2 parts and 3 parts in their burqas and carry them where they were supposed to carry them. So one supposedly, and this again, the historical veracity of this is I'm not very sure, but this is what I've heard from many people in my family, that once, from my grandfather himself, that once consignment of arms like this came, it was hidden, but the courier who was coming with money, some 5,000 or 8,000 rupees or something like that, he was caught by the police. So the money wasn't there, the arms had been supplied by these not so pleasant people of the underworld, and he had to pay money. So he went and mortgaged his house to pay for that those arms, and that house actually never came back to him. So after that, he's always lived in a rented accommodation. So that was one part of him. The other part of him was somebody who was very iconoclastic. So he deeply immersed in the religious traditions, the cultural traditions of Hyderabad, of being a Muslim, of being located in a really interesting part of colonial India, a moment in colonial India, the late 30s, when there was this eruption of things happening. But he was extremely iconoclastic about even things. I mean, so instead of, for example, I keep, as a student when I was growing up, would read about people who would try to strengthen their own culture, in a sense as a response to colonialism and the intellectual political attacks of colonialism. But he was somebody, from what I could, if I would theorize, I would say that he was somebody who would do the other way around. He would say that this is right, exactly the moment when you need to critique what is going on in your own culture. So for example, he had this saying that every taboo which you come up with in your own culture, you must publicly break that. You must break every taboo that you have, and then you might decide that I don't like something and this practice or this food habit or this dress, and I'm more comfortable with that. But as a act of self-emancipation, you need to break every taboo publicly, because unless you do that, you really don't know whether you are doing something, because you still haven't got to terms with the demons inside you, in a sense. And for example, so he and there is always this thing that maybe he used patriarchal authority to do that, but he would, for example, he forced my grandmother after marriage to drink in public. There was this place called Rustam Fram, which I don't know whether it's still there. It used to be on Bank Street in Hyderabad. So he would, he, Makhdoom, Raj Bahadur Gaur, various other people would sit there and drink, and he would take his wife along. And he sort of insisted. Initially she would say no, so then he would spike her Nimbu Pani with vodka. And then when she started saying that Rustam Fram makes the best Nimbu Pani in Hyderabad, he told her that there's this, well, that's because there's some vodka in it. And then he got her to drink in public. He would say that, you smoke in public, you go around in public. I have heard that my grandmother, and the effect of that was, though it came from a certain patriarchal authority he has as a husband in the 40s, right? But the effect of that was, though he was a communist, my grandmother contested the elections as a Congress candidate, right? And she would, I'm told, had cut her hair. She would not wear a burqa. And in the 50s, she was riding a BSA motorcycle, a 500cc BSA motorcycle, going around campaigning for herself, and she actually won elections. And she was, in fact, she went up quite high in the Congress hierarchy. If I remember correctly, I think she was an AICC member till the mid-70s. In fact, she left protesting emergency. She formally resigned from the Congress only in 75. So in a sense, he would, while he used patriarchal authority to get her to drink, to smoke in public, to, break food taboos, he sort of was also open about the fact that, yeah, he's in the Communist Party, but his wife is active in the Congress. And though he also, in 1956, by the time the Telangana armed struggle had gone down and things had changed a lot, there was a second election that happened, and the hanging of Imre Nagy in Hungary by the Soviet Union was something which led to his break with the Communist Party, and he left the Communist Party on the question of related issues of democracy, the strategy for socialism and things like that. And in a sense, then for a decade or two, he wandered around, both politically, intellectually, engaging with various strands and ideas. But again, by the 70s, he was back in active, well, not active in the sense of on-the-field communist politics, but he was very active with people like Basa Punnaiah and Sundaraiah. By the time he died in 1983, he was again very committed and active as a communist. And even as a teacher, for example, I am being told that people would, people who are in physics, who were doing linguistics, who were doing, he was a philosophy teacher, but people who were doing in other disciplines would miss their classes and come to his classes to listen. And his house was always open, as I said. So that was the type of atmosphere, the intellectual, political, what should one say, ambience, which is something which the Alamkund Miri Foundation has tried to do. We are a small foundation. We have never taken any large institutional fundings. Whenever we have taken, it's been always for particular purposes. So we have taken a few thousand rupees to start a seminar or do something of that sort. But we have never sort of taken core funding for the foundation. We, in a sense, run hand to mouth. There have been a lot of people who have helped us, people who have benefited largely from. They feel that they have from interacting with Alamkund Miri. They have given us money. Some people have given 5,000, 10,000. One person gave 50,000. So that is how we work. And so right now, for example, we have been participating a lot with students in the English and Foreign Language University and doing various talks. The seminar which is going on of young scholars, which we have always wanted. We have been thinking for a long time, which has never fructified, of getting together a 2-3 day seminar on looking at what somebody called, which I don't think is necessarily a very good phrase, but it gives a sense of what it is, of the other Renaissance. Because there's this whole thing about Indian history, about Renaissance being from Ram Manohar Roy through the Bengal and Maharashtra, reforms and questioning. So there's looking at the other Renaissance, which starts with Phule, for example, if you want to take a thing, and going right down till today, which has never come through for various reasons. But we did this whole series of seminars on Gandhi and democracy, on socialism. I think you were also part of some of those and others. With Akhil Bildyami used to be very active in that. So we have done a range of things. We have had a range of lectures which were done in September. September being the month Alam Kundi passed away. Also the month when in 1946 the Telangana armed struggle was announced. So we used to combine both the things, and we have done a series of lectures by leading intellectuals, calling them from outside, who have come and spoken on various issues. So we hope to continue doing these things, and we hope that at some institution level we keep the memory of a public space of debate, discussion, disagreement, wide-ranging, political, ideological, everything going. So that's more or less what the Alam Kundi Foundation does.